All right, good evening. We will go ahead and call this meeting to order. And if we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Wilkins, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll give you earlier notice next time. Thank you. Thank you. And can we start with the roll call, please?
Yes. For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Vice Chair Tony Tremblay, Council Member Susan Santangelo.
Here.
And Public Member Scott Bear. Here. And for the record, Chair Kelly Long is excused from tonight's meeting, and we have a quorum for Camarillo Authority. For Oxnard Authority, Chair Vianney Lopez.
Here.
Council Member Bert Perello.
Here.
Vice Chair Gabe Teron.
Here.
And Public Member Barb Filkins. And for the record, Supervisor Kelly Long is excused from tonight's meeting, and we have a quorum for Oxnard Authority.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda review. Do we have any changes, corrections?
Chair Lopez, we do not have any adjustments to tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the June 13th meeting, and we will start with I will defer to Mr. Tremblay.
Thank you, Supervisor Lopez. And that's fine. Let's do approval for minutes. Do I have a motion? So moved. All right, I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tony Tremblay.
Yes.
Council Member Susan Santangelo,
All right,
and Public Member Scott Bear.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. For Oxnard, do we have a motion or any changes required for the minutes?
So moved unless there's a change.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you. For Oxnard Authority, Chair Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Council Member Bert Perello,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gabe Teron,
Yes.
and Public Member Barbara Filkins.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 5, public comment period. And is there a statement to be read?
We have no public comments online
Thank you. Then,
or live.
thank you. Double checking 2 locations. All right. We'll move on to new business, and I will hand it over to Mr. Tremblay for Camarillo.
Thank you, Supervisor Lopez. So this is item 6A for receiving and filing a monthly staff update from Communications and Engagement Manager regarding Ventura County airports.
Good evening to you all. I'm Jeanette Haregi, Communications and Engagement Manager and Public Information Officer for the Department of Airports. I am pleased to be here this evening to present our 9th story in our Spotlight series, highlighting feel-good stories coming out of both Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Tonight's story focuses on Wings Over Camarillo. The Wings Over Camarillo Air Show has drawn both local residents and out-of-town visitors to Camarillo Airport for more than 40 years. Featuring spectacular aerobatics, countless historical military aircraft, modern military aircraft, sky trooper drops, a car show, STEM pavilion, and an array of vendor booths, Wings Over Camarillo offers both veterans of aviation and new generations of aviation enthusiasts a weekend of entertainment and education. Many may not know that Wings Over Camarillo started as a fly-in event sponsored and hosted by the Experimental Aircraft Association, or EAA. From 1980 to 2008, the annual fly-in offered audiences a smaller version of what became a full-fledged air show with Wings Over Camarillo, which began in 2010. The event was generally held on Father's Day weekend, but gloomy weather often made it difficult for the show to take flight, literally and figuratively. A group of volunteers organized a 501c3 that we called the Camarillo Wings Association in 2009, said Bill Thomas, one of the founding members of the Camarillo Wings Association and air boss for Wings Over Camarillo. Our primary goal is to promote aviation, honor the history, and inspire younger generations through a variety of educational opportunities. An incredibly complex undertaking, Wings Over Camarillo's success is dependent solely on the work of volunteers who are part of the Camarillo Wings Association or are from locally based nonprofit organizations. We work with the Commemorative Air Force Museum, EAA, Ventura County 99s, Rotary Club of Camarillo, Channel Islands YMCA, Naval Sea Cadets, Ventura County Sheriff Explorers, Civil Air Patrol, and more, Thomas said, and we give back as much as we can to each of them. To date, the Camarillo Wings Association has donated more than $701,000 to locally based nonprofits, a significant feat for any group to tout. The 2024 Wings Over Camarillo, which is slated for August 17th and 18th, will offer spectators the same awe-inspiring show while adding to the more than $700,000 in donations. With multiple aerobatic performances, a mini jet show, sailplane, E-2 Hawkeye, Dawn Patrol, a B-25, Japanese Zero, and the C-53 D-Day doll, which isn't just named for, but was actually used in the 1944 landing on the shores of France. Ventura County residents and guests will have the opportunity to enjoy a variety of aviation experiences. The STEM Pavilion is set to be the largest ever, and the car show will welcome 200 cars per day. Additionally, and perhaps most inspiring, will be the Veterans Tent, which this year is expected to welcome at least 2 World War II veterans whose active service began, at a minimum, nearly 80 years ago. The show will close with the Condor Squadron's Missing Man formation, an aerial salute to pilots who never made it home, to military pilots who never made it home. The air show would not be made possible without a critical partnership designed with local animals in mind. The Camarillo Wings Association works closely with Ventura County Animal Services to ensure that all air show activities, including pyrotechnics, do not negatively affect the animals at the shelter. It is an issue that the association, Department of Airports, and Animal Services take very seriously. The crux of Wings Over Camarillo is more than just the preservation of history, and it's more than a means of entertainment, Thomas says. It's a connection between the community and the ever-changing landscape of aviation. For more information, visit wingsovercamarillo.com. And this photo is courtesy of the Commemorative Air Force Museum, and it's one of the flights, Japanese Zero, the military aircraft that at a previous Wings Over Camarillo show. So lots of photos to choose from, but the military history is pretty impressive. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reggie. Do any members of the authority have questions? Mr. Crowell?
As of last meeting, the question about parking, any updates on the parking situation for the people that attend?
So Mr. Thomas is actually going to give a presentation a little bit later in the meeting, so he'll address that in his presentation.
We're going to defer that to later agenda item in the meeting. Okay. Are there any other questions from authority members? Are there any public comments with respect to this item?
There are no public comments.
Okay, no public comments. Then we'll go ahead and receive, and this is a receive and file.
Yes,
item.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to item B, regarding an update regarding video surveillance and access control system installation at Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Casey, you're up to bat.
Good evening. Casey Pullman, Deputy Director of Maintenance and Operations for the airports. This is a receive and file staff update to the camera security and access control system upgrade at Camarillo and Oxnard airports. And I'd like to give you a little refresher of the project history. In 2021, the airports proceeded forward to replace the outdated camera and access control systems at both airports. The previous system was over 20 years old and relied on outdated technologies. Convergent Technologies was the contractor selected to install the new system in 2022. Unfortunately, there's been a few delays with the installation of the new system, including patiently waiting on the FAA to approve a 7460 request, which is the notice of proposed construction of alteration that may affect navigable airspace. The purpose of submitting this form to the FAA is that part of the system we need to install 4 12-foot metal poles at Camarillo and 2 poles at Oxnard Airport for the camera and radio transmission mounting. This could be a several-month process, and currently we have received approvals for the Camarillo poles. However, we haven't received the approvals for the Oxnard poles. However, the overall system installation is nearly complete, with approximately 90% of the infrastructure already having been installed. So we're just hoping, we're kind of waiting on the FAA at this point, just for that approval. But in the meantime, we're going to start back up with Camarillo and finishing up the installation, and then on to Oxnard once we have the 7460 approval for the two poles over there. And so we're anticipating a full operational system by the end of the year. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Pullman. Let's see. We'll turn to Mr. Bear first, and then Mr. Perrell is on deck. Mr. Bear.
You said there were going to be some poles installed at Camarillo Airport. How tall were those?
Those are 12-foot
And
poles, and
can you tell me where they are?
two of them are on the north side. On the north side of the runway, to the east and the west of the north helipad out there. So, and that's one of the reasons why we had to submit the 7460 to ensure that it's not going to interfere with any airspace.
And that leads exactly in my next question, whether, and I'm sure you have, consulted with Orbic, or at least taken into consideration Orbic's operations.
They're far enough away from the helipad to where, and that's what the FAA's job is in reviewing these requests, is to ensure that they understand that the helipad is out there. But again, they're far enough away from the helipad that they're not going to be an obstruction.
And there's nothing on the south side of the airport that would impact Orbic?
That's correct. Nothing on the south side. The other two poles are located on the southwest of the airport, completely away from the movement areas.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Councilmember Perrell is up next.
Thank you. I appreciate the report. You mentioned that Oxnard, there was a light delay. Can you explain it? Are we waiting on federal, county, or city?
We're waiting on the FAA 7460 approval. So we've already received the Camarillo 7460. Now we're just waiting on the Oxnard. And that's just the FAA. I've been in contact with them, and they just want to ensure that we have frangible mounts on the pole. So they're just doing their due diligence. We expect an approval any day now.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Ms. Wilkins.
I think this came up last night, but transition for tenants in terms of gate cards and that type of thing.
It's going to be a seamless transition. That tenants, customers won't have any, there won't be any interaction whatsoever. Nothing will change.
So you're not going to reissue, you're not going to have to reissue the gate cards.
We're not going to reissue any gate
Okay.
cards. The tenants will not know that there's a new system in place. It's mostly for the airport, just updating our technology.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Pullman. All right, hearing none. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item?
We have no public comment.
No public comment? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. It's a receive and file item,
Thank you.
so the record will note that it's been received and filed. We'll move on specifically to the next few items relative to Camarillo Airport Authority. Item C, recommendation by the Director of Airports to expedite the review of the Camarillo Airport Part 150, a noise study flight path alternative analysis. Mr. Freitas, you're up.
Vice Chair, committee members, Director of Airports. This is an item that we've gotten feedback as you've heard us report over the last year and a half. Both airports were conducting Part 150 noise studies. We are a little more than halfway through those processes, and this one item specifically has to do with Camarillo Airport. And at the last Camarillo Airport Authority meeting, with feedback from community members, our elected officials, County Board of Supervisors, City Council members from Camarillo, the question was to staff, is there something we could do to expedite, again, this noise process, Part 150 study we expect to be wrapped up first quarter of 2025. Is there something that we could do to expedite that would have impactful changes to reduce or mitigate noise to the communities of Camarillo in particular? And so we've done some analysis, and that's what's in this this board letter that you see. More than 90% of our noise complaints from Camarillo associated with Camarillo Airport are from Old Town, having to do with jet arrivals into Camarillo Airport. So staff put their heads together and looked at the various options. And to be clear, there are many things on the docket for us to consider in the final noise study. And that's kind of the NCP, the noise compatibility program for each airport. We'll have a laundry list of things we will be implementing and analyzing to mitigate noise. But the one thing that we're asking the Camarillo Airport Authority to support us in moving forward in, the item that we came up with was hiring a consultant to analyze the approach path, the FAA designated approach path into Camarillo Airport. And I've done this in my previous responsibilities with Contra Costa County. We had a departure, instrument departure issue. And we handed it off to the FAA, and it took them years to get in the queue, to analyze it, and then make a change and publish that change. So what we're proposing is that we hire a consultant. We select a very diverse rating team. We already have in mind corporate pilots. We have a certified flight instructor that's familiar with the two airports, community member from Old Town already lined up, one of our airport staff, and kind of round out that evaluation panel, and select a consultant, do the work in advance for the FAA to expedite that analysis, and then kick it to the FAA to look at what we can do. And preliminarily, the discussions we've had with consultants, the things we would look at is, can we actually relocate or change the location of the approach? So it's not, say, over Old Town. Can we move it, say, south over agricultural land? Can we raise the approach? The typical slope on an approach, instrument approach, is about 3 degrees. Can we raise it maybe to 3.5 degrees? Doesn't seem like a lot. When we're talking maybe 10 miles out, that could be significant. And the last is maybe publish a visual approach. What is that? Because we're fortunate to be in fairly nice weather in California on a regular basis. There is what you call it is a published visual approach. It's used at other airports. We'll talk about that. I have some slides that will kind of show this, but it's basically a roadmap to drive around, fly around areas that you don't want, say, for noise abatement. So those are kind of the things we're looking at. But let's show some of the visuals that we have. Kind of explain. So what you have in front of you is an aerial of Camarillo Airport. To the right of that is Old Town, again, where we get more than 90% of our noise complaints on an annual basis are from that community. So that's the area to the right highlighted. The water tower is a pretty familiar landmark. There's for pilots, and you'll see that in the reference as we go through some of them stuff. There's another overhead of the approach area, water tower. So what you see in front of you, I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is, we have 2 published approaches into Camarillo. This is one of them. You'll see the 252, that's a heading. So most of these approaches, they give you a heading, and they have staged altitudes and reporting points, how far you are from the airport. It's kind of a staged, there's stabilized altitude, you step down as you get closer to the airport. So this is one. And this in green, what you see is from our new VNOMS tracking system. You see, all the green to the top of the page, those are VFR planes, and that's why they're scattered all over, because they're not following the defined, say, approach into the airport. But below on that top track and the bottom track, you see very defined approaches into the airport. Those are dictated by the FAA. Where they fly, what altitudes they fly are dictated to those pilots on this flight. That's the first one, and the second one in the black below. So one of the things, again, about 16 miles out, shows how far out that goes. And so you're talking Thousand Oaks, near those areas. And can we adjust that approach? Again, that's expertise we don't have internally with the airport. We hire a consultant to, again, do that analysis and see if that's and it's safely be done. So here's some visuals. Again, you can see the water tower to the right, and how close, about a mile away. To the ends of the airport there. And so trying to do a 3D so you kind of get a spatial orientation of where it is above. So it's slightly south of the water tower is the flight track, at least the southern flight track. That's a 3-degree slope. And can we raise that maybe to 3.5 degrees? That's about the maximum typical budget flow is 3.5 degrees. Another from the other side, kind of what that looks like into the. Before we go to this, Dave, can we go to that? Can you pull up the 3D visual with a better? So again, here's a top down looking at the flight tracks into the airport. There's the water tower kind of in the middle of the page. Up there, and you could kind of swing around below and above, kind of give a visual of what it looks like. Again, these are set by the FAA. But we can't change those. Unlike the changes we were able to make at Oxnard, because we were talking about visual operations, touching those, where we made changes voluntarily from left turns to right turn. We made great improvements. Here's a little more complicated, but kind of what they're talking about. Giving the visual of that. That's the flight track, and you see Old Town gets. That's the traffic they're talking about in frequency. So again, what we're looking for support, we think this is the one thing that we could work on to expedite. Again, there's a laundry list we got from Mayor Tremblay, laundry list of things. This was one of them to analyze this, permanent flight monitors, environmental analysis, things like that. There's a laundry list of things we will look at that will go into the larger program of the noise abatement program, the NCP at the end. But this is something we could expedite, which this process typically takes years. I want to be clear about that. It's not something that's very simple. And this is not a silver bullet. This isn't, hey, if this works, it answers all of our problems. It's not that simple. We are looking at a lot of things we'd want to implement to help mitigate noise as best we can. So again, in summary, let me go back to the last item, the visual public visual approach there, if you would. Yeah. So this is one that is published for Monterey Airport, neighboring airport, to again, of course, the pilots that are not in instrument conditions, clear day, so that they could avoid some of the noise sensitive areas in that community. That might be something we publish to help pilots coming from other parts of the country, other parts of the state, to help avoid some of the more sensitive communities that we have near Camarillo. So that's all I have with that. Again, so that's haven't answered questions, but that's what we're looking for is your support that we're on the right direction and we should move in that. It would require us to use one of our on-call consultants. So depending on the dollar amount, which could be, we're estimating somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to do something like this, is so depending on that dollar amount and requirements by the county, you may see a contract come back before this committee in the future. But that's all I have. And if you have questions for me, which I'm suspecting.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Let's go with questions first. I'll wait. Any comments? Councilmember Perrello.
The Oxnard, is it okay to ask?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Number one, will this increase any risk at all? This slight change?
So that is part of the process that we would go through is hiring a consultant to do the analysis. Quite frankly, most of those consultants are former FAA that did these kind of analysis. We do the analysis through our consultant, submit it to the FAA.
and they review, and safety for sure is one of their top priorities and concerns. What likely would happen if there was a possibility of another approach is the two approaches that exist would remain. And there might be a third one that is published, so they have options. And we would do our part to encourage pilots to utilize, say, the one that is more noise sensitive. But safety is for sure the top priority, no question.
Two more questions. You mentioned 50 to 100,000 over the years that this would take or per year?
This would be a one-time shot with a consultant to do this analysis, come up with a proposal if they can, and then submit it. So it's a one-time.
And the last question, this is going to address the landings at the airport. Are there any issues concerning the takeoffs and how they're going over? Various areas in North Oxnard are starting to complain about the jet noise coming from this airport.
And you know that individual, we've met publicly. So those are things we would ask a consultant, is there an opportunity to look at that kind of thing? So yes, if there is a possibility. Departures are typically a different process, but we've had that individual ask a few times. So if there's an opportunity, we would add that into that analysis.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions? Let's go to comments. Mr. Bear.
Two things. You ping pong here. You touched on it, but I think it's worth mentioning and highlighting the fact that you've involved a member of the public on the search committee to identify the consultant. I think it shows the department's transparency and willingness and desire to bring the public in and have the public help solve this problem. So kudos for that. Kudos also for how responsive your department was in reacting to the letter from Camarillo and taking decisive action to get this. It was always sort of anticipated that the study would be done, but to expedite it and bring it forward and do it now is
Yeah.
I think.
And I thank you for touching on it. You know, that's probably a question that folks may have is, well, why didn't you do this sooner? I want to be clear that we needed enough analysis and enough information to get to this point and not just shotgun. Well, let's do this. There's all kinds of things for us to consider. And at this point, we have enough data that this all makes sense, that it's the time to expedite it. Again, the noise compatibility, the Part 150 noise study, we don't expect to wrap that up until the first quarter of 5. So that's still 9 months out. So this is the right time to do this. And we think it's the most impactful opportunity with, as I mentioned, various things. And that's just preliminary discussions with one of the consultants, those 3 things: raise the altitude, the slope, create a new southern location that's maybe over ag, and or publish a visual approach.
Any other? Councilmember Santana.
I wanted to, excuse me. Thank you for your presentation. Those pictures with the 3D overlays are really informative. So thank you for that. And thank you for
Committee
being.
member Bear has been hounding us to do something like this on a regular basis. So I thought it was a good idea. And yeah,
Thank you.
nicely, gently asking.
How about gently
Gently
asking? There
asking.
you go. Took the words
Great.
out of my mouth.
Well, I appreciate them. Thank you. And thank you also for being so responsive. I know that there's been a lot of pressure from the community. I know we put some pressure on you, and so I appreciate you being so responsive. I actually think this is faster than I expected to see this come forward to us. So I really appreciate you bringing it to us and moving forward on it. Thank you.
Ditto to my colleagues' comments. And this is and I know Mr. Bear has been advocating. I think that's the word. I'm sure that you had. I'm sure that's the word that you had in mind. This is a good start, and we really appreciate the initiative in terms of trying to moving the study forward. I would encourage that, as the staff report indicates, that we work as quickly as possible to get a consultant in. I really like the outreach that's being done, the involvement in this. And certainly don't want to forget those other items that were included in my May letter to the department. But my understanding is that you're going to be looking at those within the context of the second phase of the study. So incorporated in the CP. Yes, correct. That's great. So thank you very much for that. Any other comments before we hear a motion? Okay, we hear a motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
For Camarillo,
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. Were there any public comments?
there were no public comments for the record.
I remembered. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Please
For
call
Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tony Tremblay,
the- Yes,
Councilmember Susan Santangelo,
Yes.
and Public Member Scott Bear. Thank you. That recommendation passes unanimously.
thank you very much. We're on to item D, which is amendment number 2 to the consulting services contract for Camarillo Airport, the airport layout plan update. I believe Ms. Powers. That's that one.
Thank you, Chair Tremblay. Authority members, Aaron Powers, Projects Administrator for the Department of Airports. I am here tonight for this item to seek your recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for approval of an authorization for the Director of Airports or his designee to sign amendment number 2 with Kaufman Associates, increasing the total amount of the contract by a little bit over $126,000 to a total of $812,791. This increase also increases the cost share of the contract for the department out of pocket from $333,000 and change to $460,332. In April of 2020, the Board of Supervisors authorized the Department of Airports to enter into a contract with Kaufman Associates for a master plan update for the Camarillo Airport. As we've brought before your authority on several occasions about the history of this and getting buy-in on several actions, a master plan includes components of usual components of a master plan include significant analysis of the future role of an airport. And though that does not necessarily mean that the role of the airport would change, initial public meetings revealed great community concern that that would actually be the case. And so to reassure the community that this was not the intent of the Department of Airports and the county, we sought to scale back the master plan and transition it to an airport layout plan update. In 2022, we were able to work with the FAA to buy into that transition idea. And we were able to bring to the Board of Supervisors and your authority before that in 2023, the approval for amendment number 1, which transitioned the master plan to an airport layout plan update. And that update would still allow the department to meet our grant obligations and to accomplish our essential planning ahead of critical projects in the 3 to 10 year term. But it also, most importantly, did not include a component that considered a change to the role of the airport. We wanted to make sure that the community was being heard. However, as we've continued this study, some of the data that was initially collected in the master plan was deemed too stale, some of the base years, for it to be used in the airport layout plan update. And therefore, the consultant needed to essentially refresh or start over with some of that data to be able to get the plan and the study to where we are today. That amendment number 2 requests an increase of a little over $126,000 to accomplish that. And the amended contract price for the airport layout plan
will then go from 686,000 to that $812,000 figure. It's important that we make it clear that the FAA grant total will not change. They have given us a grant for $352,459. So any increases that we've seen along the way is solely coming from the Airport Enterprise Fund, which we do have sufficient appropriations to cover the cost of the contract. I am happy to say that we really are nearing the end of this process. So this will be the total we'll be looking at to wrap up this study. The airport layout plan update has been submitted to the FAA, and we are just working on just receiving any comments, updating and finalizing the documentation and closing out the grant, which expires in a couple months. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Myers. Do any members of the authority have any questions? Are there any members of the public? Councilmember,
Is there a termination date on the grant?
Yes, it's in August of 2024.
Mr. Crawley, the dais isn't curved, so I can't see over there. I'll get my eyeglass prescription improved. All right, let's see. There are any members of the public who wish to comment on this item?
We have no public comment.
All right, hearing none. Members of the authority, any comment? Do I hear a motion?
Move that we approve the amendment as requested.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second as to approve the staff recommendation on this item. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tony Tremblay,
Yes.
Councilmember Susan Santangelo,
Yes.
and Public Member Scott Bear.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously 4-0.
Thank you very much. We now move to a receive and file item. Now we move to Wings Over Camarillo presentation. And I believe both Mr. Thomas and Mr. Valenzuela are going to go ahead and present to the authority. And we appreciate you both because we know you spend an awful lot of time volunteering in the community. Is this a tag team presentation?
Actually,
Okay.
he's here as my bodyguard to keep Keith from pulling the chalk on me. Anyway. Go ahead and got it. Okay, good. Last night the clicker didn't work, so. Anyway, Jeanette did a fine job of covering the first 3 or 4 slides that I have, so you are spared the arduous part of reading the first one. I wanted to show you just sort of a bird's eye look of what the ramp looks like on an air show day. The airplanes will change. I don't have a C-17 this year, but we will have 4 big airplanes for the public to view and several to be toured. I did want to say that Chris Venezuela is the VP for the Camarillo Wings Association, and he plays, many of us wear multiple hats on Camarillo Wings Association, and he wears probably more than most of the other than me. So Jeanette covered this, so I'm not going to. The only thing that I'll say on our air show and what we do is the Camarillo Wings Association has a mission statement like all 501c3s. Our mission statement is to put on an air show. Now, all the other things that happen because of that are the side benefits and the connection between the airport, the community, the county, and all of the people who are trying to influence into looking at aviation with new possibilities. Our demographics are exactly what you would think about, probably a 30 to 50 mile circle with Santa Barbara, Ventura, Los Angeles, and then for folks that really like air shows, they'll come from long distances. we're going to be talking about these, so I don't need to talk on the word slide. So our theme this year is to salute the test pilots. And we have the great fortune of having a large number of the test pilot community that lives in or close to Ventura County. But we've gone outside our local area to bring in 4 grand marshals. The first one is a Camarillo person who was the first pilot for the Lockheed F-35. He was their chief test pilot at the time, Tom Morgenfeld. He's got a hangar and keeps an airplane here at Camarillo. Kurt Schroeder worked out of Point Mugu for a lot of years with me. He was a Grumman test pilot and had done a large variety of F-14 and A-6 stuff, but the X-29 out of Edwards was one of the more intriguing looking airplanes that didn't work. It was supposed to be increased maneuverability, and it certainly looks like an unstable airplane, and it was, but it didn't accomplish what they wanted to do. Roy Martin is one of my fellow Northrop Grumman guys. He was an Air Force test pilot, worked as an instructor at Edwards for many years in test pilot school. That's an F-5 that is designed to test how to do sonic booms without causing noise complaints all the way across the country. So you're seeing some of the news articles about, I think Boeing or Lockheed's got a new test airplane to test sonic booms. It's based on the stuff that Roy did early on with the F-5. And then another local, Kevin, is a retired Marine colonel who took the Osprey when it was grounded for the first couple of major accidents in 2002 and re-qualified the airplane for flight. And now that the Osprey is operational, a lot has to do with the stuff that Kevin was able to accomplish. He's a department head at Point Mugu, runs the targets department, and lives in Camarillo. They are going to be sort of housed in the STEM pavilion. And our concept is that we will have a large contingent of test pilots there signing posters and stuff for the kids and talking with folks. And the STEM pavilion is one of the big hangars, part of the CAF. And we have at least, besides the robotics, we're going to have the microjet in there and a new electric. It's a personal. It's almost like a flying car, only it's got 4 electric props on the front and 4 on the back, and it'll take off vertically and then go forward. And it's to give everybody the taste of what could be coming. And it's also one of the reasons why it's really important to keep Oxnard a certified commercial airport, because I see that that's where the electric airplanes feeding Los Angeles is going to be. So, little political play. Okay, for headliners, probably one of the more accomplished ladies flying today is Vicki Benzing. Unfortunately, we could not get her to bring her new P-51 that she got from Clay Lacy that does an amazing air show, but our box is too small to have that size airplane. And so she's going to have to bring the Stearman instead. I really wanted to have her bring the P-51. John Culver with an AT-6. That turns out to be the biggest airplane that can do a full aerobatic air show in Camarillo and use the aerobatic box that's the size that'll fit Camarillo. Back with popular demand is Aaron Fitzgerald in the Red Bull. It's one of probably 2 or 3 pilots in the U.S. that's fully certified to fly aerobatics in helicopters. And then Tori Ward with a microjet. We will have some pyro and Jason Soames with his MiG-17. Judy Phelps from Santa Paula with the pits, and Sammy Mason from Santa Paula with his Edge 540. We have a formation team of RVs, which are the experimental aircraft that so typifies what flies out of Camarillo, because a lot of them were probably built here. And then this time, we're going to have a sailplane do its aerobatic performance. And that's probably the diametric opposite of an F-18 Hornet demonstration. On the warbird side, we've got the CAF contingent of the Zero and the Hellcat, and hopefully the Spitfire. But then from Palm Springs, we'll have the King Cobra, the P-50. They're going to bring a couple of P-51s. This is the Tuskegee Airman Red Tail, and then from Chino, the P-38. D-Day Doll, which will be participating along with the Air Force Wings of Blue. That's how I can get the Air Force to come every year, because they love jumping out of D-Day Doll, which brings you the old and the new in the same airplane. And then I just talked to the Air Guard at Channel Islands, so they'll bring over a C-130 for being able to be toured. It won't be one of the MAF airplanes, because they just activated the MAS part of the squadron to handle the force fires that are going on. So that we heard today that the Air Guard got activated today or yesterday. So then we'll have E2, which we haven't had for a while. Hopefully they'll make it back. They're currently on the USS Washington headed for Japan, but they're supposed to get there and then come back before the air show. So all of these things are dynamic. The only reason I say this is the plan, but the plan changes. You have to have plan B, C, D, and E. Then the veterans that Jeanette talked about, we're really looking forward to having some folks, and we'll have some Korean War and a bunch of Vietnam folks there. On the pyro, you see the boxes. The boxes are full of fuel, and that's what makes a nice whoosh. And then on top of it is a couple of sticks of dynamite. We're going to cut the dynamite down in half. So it'll probably be a single stick. And we aim the end of the dynamite stick toward the animal shelter. And the reason is because the explosion happens 90 degrees to the stick. So the noise will go to Spanish Hills and not to the animal shelter. So the animal shelter and the Department of Airports and my pyro guys have been working very closely, and the pyro does not bother the animal shelter, despite all the calls that I get. Classic car show. And of course, the whole idea is to get the kids out there, because you want to get the 10 to 13-year-olds to hook them. And the Condors, so we'll do missing man for several of our really key people that we've lost this year, including the lead of the Condors that was killed at the Reno Air Races last year after the air show. He was the lead of the Condors, and he got hit from the side and probably never knew what hit him coming into land. I mean, it was so sad. Any questions? What time? How much? How much? Yeah, I cut over a third.
Mr. Thomas and Mr. Bell, just an excellent presentation. Are there questions from, okay, Councilmember Perrello?
On the car show, it was mentioned 200 cars per day. Is going to be the same cars, or you rotate 200 and another 200?
It really, it's one of these things. I don't care. I can't, they can't be more than 200 cars. So they sign up, and a lot of them will sign up for one day. in another group. And we will talk, I'd like to answer your question on the parking because I know that you had that lurking. We're at a point now, we our peak draw was about 10,000 each day. 10,000 puts our parking almost to, I think we had a couple of empty spots on the 10,000. A lot of times we have to turn the cars away at some point and then they go find some place to park. But the reality is that that's probably 10,000 people is the max that this airport can handle inside the airport territory. So we're looking at maybe this being the last year that we can do on airport parking. And we think that we're probably going to have to figure out how to do off-site parking for next year and follow on, especially if the parcels that we use for parking get developed into other areas, not just electric cars, which are the thorn in this particular year. So if that happens, then we'll be coming to get support from the city and the county and the airport to try to figure out how to do it, because we've done some calculations that to move that many people, especially at the end of the show, is going to probably take a fleet of 30 to 40 buses. We're going to talk with the fair to see how they have done it. So if anybody has any great ideas or people that we should talk to, we're wide open, but we really do see the limitation for the air show being automobile parking and not anything else.
Mr. Burr.
To your point about other people to talk to, Carpinteria does an avocado festival every year and it's all off-site parking. So you might talk to Carpinteria and see how they accomplish it. They don't, I'm sure don't have 10,000 people, but it's a pretty efficient system. It works pretty well.
The biggest problem that I see is that easy to get people in because they aren't coming all at the same time. The problem is at the exit point where the air show's over and then everybody wants to get out of there. And I don't know how many people went over to Point Magoo to watch the air show last year, but I heard a lot of complaints from folks that they sat for an hour and a half and never moved. And that just puts a damper on the enthusiastic appreciation of an air show. So, but
Any other Councilmember Toron?
Thank you. And thank you for the update and the information. Obvious you all have put a ton of work into this again, and all of your dedication and that of your planning team is absolutely commendable. To build on Councilmember Perello's question about parking, I seem to recall in the previous conversation that the idea about the price point for charging for parking could also be in tandem with a message of encouraging carpooling to save on costs, but also to open up more parking spots for folks. And there's also the concept of VIP closer parking where you can pay more to park closer. Although when you look at it, if you park closer, when the show gets out, you're waiting longer to get out, right? So maybe the VIP is closer to the exit. But I only bring that up just for consideration as you kind of conceptualize what next year might look like. If you start looking at off-site parking, there may be a medium there as well where you can find a price point that folks would be willing to pay, but also encourages folks to come in ride sharing methods, whether it be with each other, with Uber or Lyft or whatever. So I appreciate you all looking at those options because you're absolutely right. The fewer cars there are, the easier it is for everybody to get in and out. And we, as event planners, I'm sure you have to think about the unthinkable emergency situations where everybody has to leave at one point for some reason, or emergency vehicles have to get in. And so I appreciate you all thinking about that. And there's a joke there about a rave at the beach, but I'm going to keep it to myself.
Yeah.
So
the as far as the emergency processes, we have a tabletop planning that we do is scheduled for I think the 25th of July, and we bring in Ventura County Fire is our host. We bring in CHP, sheriff, we bring in AMR, ambulance, all of the people that are involved with the Department of Airports in the operations side. And it's probably one of the first full county planning sessions that was done. And we've been doing this for 10 or 12 years, 12 years. And it has really improved the communications in between agencies. So we bring in the 911 operators so that they have an appreciation of what's going on. So if they have a pyro go off and somebody calls on a freeway saying, I think there was a crash, they can say, well, there's an air show type of thing. So part of our plan is how to handle the traffic in and out as far as emergency vehicles go and how to get to hospitals and all that kind of stuff. So
Great. Thank you very much. And I'll just add to that. I figured out a number of years ago, showing up very early to jury service, the key isn't to park as close as possible, it's to park near the exit for that reason. And so I appreciate all the work you've all put into this. And it looks like it's going to be another great event this year. So thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask for comments from are there any other questions? Let me just find out, are there any public comments on this item?
We have no public comment.
No public comments. Other members of the authority, would you like to comment? Offer any comments? Councilmember Peralta.
Yes, again, great appreciation for what you're doing. I hope that this can continue on, and I appreciate what you're looking to do to find parking. Because as was mentioned at the beginning of the speech, how much money you've brought in for the charitable organizations that you assist. I have no connections with the school districts, but I would assume that the Oxnard High School District has some buses. You might be able to do something. And there's two councils here. Maybe they have connections with the school district to maybe get some buses, but the amount of money that you brought in, that is a big hook. Thank you very much.
Let me just finish up by expressing my appreciation to both of you. I just don't know if Mr. Valenzuela gets to wear an orange hat as well as you, Mr. Thomas. But this is a really labor-intensive project. And speaking as a longtime member of Camarillo Rotary, and I've worked the beer booth or one of the beer booths at the air show for several years. I can attest to the fact how much organizational, how much effort you make, and I deeply appreciate what you are doing. The STEM pavilion in particular gets better and better and better every year. And to watch the kids in that STEM pavilion is amazing. And having the veterans hangar there is in the test pilots. And I also appreciate the fact that you've really given some forethought to the animals in the animal shelter as well. So there's been a lot of forethought and a heck of a lot of labor on this. So thank you. Great kudos to you both and to all the volunteers who are putting this on. All right, with that, anybody else? We got to receive and file, and thank you. You're still not wearing the orange hat, Mr. Valenzuela, but we'll have to make sure you. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 7, Director's Report.
Vice Chair, committee members, I have just a few items. The first item I wanted to do is just pull up a slide that has the department's accounting team. Every year you hear us go through the budget, all those things. And here's our unsung heroes that you don't see a lot of. To the right, Jamal and Corey, Tara, Jeanette, and Shannon, who are part of our accounting team. So that's all wrapped up for this year. Our board of supervisors, V&A, can appreciate that. But you know, did a great, fabulous work for us this year. Just wanted to recognize them very quickly. The next slide I have is you may hear and may see some changes around the airport. You know that we have Colson contract fire helicopter based at the airport. They change from time to time. This is their biggest version. The county fire department also has 2 Firehawks that they each have 1,000 gallons. This Chinook is 3,000 gallons. So now that we're in fire season, you'll see some changes around the airport, Camarillo specifically. They do relocate over to Oxnard Airport during the air show, but some changes happening around. which means noise concerns, what's the large helicopter, a lot of activity during the season. And it's been pretty active to start, as you well know. Over at Oxnard Airport, we have just a quick, oh, I'm sorry, did I jump over something? No. Vision mission. Just want to share with everybody, we have an updated posters that are coming. You'll see around our office soon. The county, at the same time as the department, was doing an update to our mission vision and goals, values. We're going to see some of those plastered around the airport. Just want to share that with you that we completed that. And what's the next item? Oxnard Airport asphalt. So we are in the middle, just wrapped up the second phase of 4 phases. We've got about a month left. Early part of August, we will wrap up Taxiway Alpha project at Oxnard Airport. Important to know, it's the final phase of the 3 projects. 3.5 years ago, we did the runway. Last year, we did the taxiway connectors, and now the parallel taxiway Alpha is the third. Just under 40 million in new pavement at Oxnard Airport, which should be in good shape for the next 40 to 50 years. So we're getting close. Everything's been going well, on target, on budget. Everything else is going well. And what's our last item? Oh, some news that Aaron has reported a few times. We are doing I call it temporary. It is a temporary fix here at Camarillo Airport of some of our pavements. The temporary fix is a $3 million fix, because you've heard us talk about the $80 million worth of reconstruction we need to do here for the pavements at Camarillo. So we pushed this temporary fix because we didn't want to put new asphalt down, and Bill's Air Show with some of the heavy aircraft he could have. We kind of wanted to push that. This is some of the pavement we got. We had to close it because it's in poor shape. We'll divert around it. But now you can see at least some of the pavement. This is some of the heavier jets that we have here. It's key to note that these are aircraft that meet the Joint Powers Agreement. Less than 115,000 pounds are doing this kind of damage. So when folks ask, hey, what about larger airplanes coming? This is why we say no to that. Our pavements aren't even designed to handle anything greater than what's in the Joint Powers Agreement. Most of the airplanes operating at our airport are 100,000 pounds or less. So just wanted to show you the pavement, see why we're having to do an emergency repair, a temporary repair, just after the air show. I think that's all I have, unless there are any specific questions.
Councilmember Perrello and Ms. Wilkins, you're on deck.
Just the last slide, the pictures of the damage on the runway, that's over a short period of time. And
Well,
the
that
sec-
is
and
not
the
actually a runway picture. That's a taxiway picture. That is a short period of time. Heavy airplanes and the excessive heat that we've had has added to that happening. And that happened in the span of about a week.
Wow. When you're mentioning the limit on the plane, the weight limit, when the plane comes down and touches down, what if the plane weighs X? Is it multiple times of X and it hits the ground and rolls off?
What causes the damage, if you will? Yeah, I mean, that's why, the large airplanes that have come in for the air show, those coming in once for an air show once a year doesn't do those kinds of things. It's a repetitive heat and damage and weight of the airplane that do those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wilkins?
I just wanted to, when we started the taxiway project, there was a lot of concern over how much it would complicate matters in life at Oxnard.
At Oxnard Airport, yes.
And I just want to compliment the team. It's gone pretty well. And I also wanted to just add another thanks also to the airport and to the tenants. We had a school aviation camp visit today, and they did an outstanding job. You should have seen the kids when they left. We didn't get to fly them because of the weather, but they got there and all they wanted was lunch. And about 1 o'clock, nobody was saying anything anymore about lunch, but except for the teachers.
Thank you. All right, unless there are any other questions under item 7, let's go to item 8. Is there anything under item 8 that anybody wishes to discuss? These are for information only. Hearing nothing on that, under correspondence, item 9, is there anything any members of the authority would like to discuss? All right, comments by authority members. We're on to number 10. Supervisor Lopez, you can take Oxnard. You take Oxnard first? All right.
Sure. Any comments from authority members in Oxnard? All right, Councilmember Turan.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Lopez, Chair Lopez. I just want to again thank the airport staff for their attentiveness to any concerns or complaints and sometimes compliments that come in. I just wanted to relay, and I'm sure Mr. Freitas, we can follow up later. I did receive a comment from a resident of the Fremont South neighborhood, which is a neighborhood that is immediately to the north and the east of the airport. So it's bordered by 5th Street and to the south, and then Doris to the north. And they had their neighborhood council meeting yesterday, and it was a really good turnout. But afterwards, I did have a resident ask me about visible changes she's noticed in flight patterns. And so she did say she would be reaching out to airport staff just with those comments. And the fact that we have the spot on the website just for that, and then an email address dedicated to that, and all the available information for tonight's meeting, as I gave that to her as well, is great, because it was like a one-stop shop for information, but also the ability to connect directly with staff. So just wanted to thank you for that and relay that, and I'm sure we can follow up later. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Perrello.
Yes, last meeting, we had a discussion and I got filled in by Ms. Powers about the dirt and the testing still going on with the soil. I'd like to request that the head of all the neighborhoods in Oxnard, Diane Belza, be included in the list when there is new information, so she shares it with her neighborhood councils. I'll get you her email. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perrello. I don't see any other hands, so back to you, Councilmember Tremblay, or Mayor Tremblay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lopez. So any comments from members of the authority for Camarillo? All right, hearing none. Then I think it's time for adjournment. Let's go ahead and, you want to go ahead and adjourn?
I'll just mention our next authority meeting is August 8th at 6:30. And I'll let you adjourn.
All right, we'll adjourn. You can see we're playing this back and forth. So we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the Camarillo Airport Authority and the Oxnard Airport Authority.
And the Oxnard Airport Authority.